we mentioned listening as being a powerful vehicle for helping people work out how and why they might change. And that I'm sure that's something that in your podcast is a theme that'll run through it. And it's a skill. And it's very simple, and it takes practice, just like any good sporting maneuver. And I think it's the same with affirming. And the nicest way that I have found in working with practitioners to describe this is, just imagine that you're wearing a set of spectacles or goggles or lenses. One of them is looking at people's problems. And you sometimes have to, you work in all these environments. You do need to help people work through what are their problems. Now imagine having on top of that a set of lenses in front of them that looks at people's strengths. And if you've got those strengths lenses on, you're not forgetting about problems, but you've got the strength lenses on as your first thing that you see, then what will naturally happen is that you will notice people's strengths. Affirmation is simply the skill of pointing it out to them. And it's not like praise in which you're passing a judgment, almost like top down and good job and well done, or enthusiasm or cheerleading. It's not something, it's something that's already inside them that nobody can take away from them. So affirming is like shining a light on people's strengths that are already there. And that's for them to take ownership, to recognize that and to take ownership of. So for example, a client that I often talk about who really helped me understand this beautifully. I mean, we're trying in the AMI field to say the best teachers are our clients, and that is absolutely not some kind of glib psychobabble. I honestly, genuinely believe it. And now here's a nice little story that'll illustrate it. He had multiple problems: type 1 diabetes, multiple substance dependence things, as well as a host of other social and personal issues. And he was about to lose his leg, okay? And he was chain smoking, using drugs, and some of the things he was doing with alcohol were definitely not constructive for his diabetes. I could put the problem lenses on, and it's a hell of a story that I could tell you. And you'll get quite down, oh my God, like I did and like he did, right? But apparently he comes back one day and he says, Steve, I've quit one of these drugs. And I said, what? He said, yeah, it was something you said. And I said, oh, come on now, man. What was it I said? So this is what he reported. And I do remember saying it to him. We had this rather difficult kind of problem-ridden session, right? But right at the end, we both stood up and he straightened he's always beautifully dressed, this guy, with his wonderful walking stick that he'd carved himself. And I said to him, apparently, you are a dignified person. And he just looked at me and we said goodbye. And he said that he carried that idea that I am a dignified person out with him into the world and decided, well, I'm a dignified person and this stuff's not going to get me down. I'm going to do something about my life. So there's, I guess, is an illustration of what an affirmation is and quite how powerful it can be and how very simple it is. If you wear those strength goggles, the affirmations will come out of you. So right. It's, of course we can say, look, it's a technique, which it is, but really what's at the bottom of it are the lenses that you wear.
Right.
And it's that critical element of the attitude that I highlighted, which is you're coming alongside a person who's got strengths.
Right.
And so you've got those lenses on. So you will use a technique like that quite naturally in helping them see a path to improvement.
Right. Wow.
So these are some of the fundamentals of motivational interviewing, if you like. But I guess the really unique part is the evoking, and that's a state of mind in which you're looking forward with them and how and why they might change. And I guess that's something we might clarify, or certainly in your podcast, you'll find people talking about evoking. And we can't think of a simpler word for it, but it's a beautiful word, but it's a little bit complicated, but there you go.
Right. I wonder if you could speak to your thoughts on the links between a statement like that, or affirmations, more broadly speaking, and to this business of evoking? Like how are those two ideas linked? How does affirming someone else help to cultivate their ability and the practitioner's ability to look forward and to evoke a different way forward for somebody?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I get it. So imagine having a third set of lenses which has to do with MI. So you've got your MI lenses on top of the strength lenses, right? If you look at it that way, when you've got the MI lenses, you're focused on how they might change, how and why they might change. Okay. So, for example, this coach I spoke to this morning says, "What do you think about ba ba ba?" This is a particular elite sportsman that we both know. And I said, "Well, tell me, how have you been getting on with him?" And he said, "Well, I sat down with him, asked him how he was feeling about himself as a player at the moment. But then I said to him, listen," and this is where he's obviously got the MI lenses in front, right? I said to him, "How do you want your career to pan out here? Because you've got some problems. You've got some problems, many problems you're facing. But how do you want your career to pan out?" Now, the guy's answer amounts to what we call change talk. Okay? And so that's a pretty normal, helpful question to ask, like any good teacher or sports coach might, or counselor might. You're asking about change. So the MI lenses have got to do with change. Now the two of them are facing in the direction of change, and we could look at that as being right. So now you're in the MI groove. The moment you're asking about change and you're believing that the answer is inside the person, you're in the MI groove. Now, all the techniques that we talk about in MI can be used in the service of that journey, and affirmation is just one of them. So this coach, I'm not sure what he did, right? But he might have said to the person after a while, "So you really feel determined to make this work for you despite the problems you've got at home." Okay. "You really feel determined" is an affirmation about a strength inside him, but it's seen through the MI lenses because it's a focus on how he can improve and change. Do you see that? So the affirmation is used in the service of evoking, of getting the wisdom out of him about how he's going to improve. And it's a very powerful thing to say, because the athlete will then say, "Oh, absolutely. Determination is something that I've always had. That's how I've got to where I have. Even though now I find myself with all these problems in my home life and that are really, I'm up against it. But that's right. I feel really determined." Now that coach could reply with another affirmation, which is, "And you've had the courage to grab hold of me and say, I want to talk about this." Okay, right. So there's another affirmation, which refers to courage. And the guy might reply, "Yeah, absolutely. I just decided it's time for me to be open with somebody, and I'm feeling very vulnerable in talking to you about this, but I'm safe with you because I know I trust you. So yeah, I plucked up the courage. It took me a long time to talk to you about it. I'm worried that you might deselect me from the team and so on, but look, this is the reality. So it did take quite a lot of courage to come and see you about it." And that coach could even reply with another affirmation. Now, I'm not suggesting that you just use affirmation like that all the time. It's just that you asked me, in what way is affirmation used in the heart of MI with evoking? And I've given you two examples, and I could give you another one. You know what I mean? So there's an example of how you can sit in the MI groove with somebody, talk about change, believe they've got the answers, but do this by highlighting strengths that they've got, which you know are going to help them formulate a solution.